And next will be Maka Social. So Michael, if you'd like to come to the stage.
All right, I will actually skip the elevator pitch because we have a captive audience. You're going to see it all unfold the way it's supposed to, and tell you about our origin story. A few years ago, I was working full-time. I was going to school full-time. It was kind of a lonely existence, and there was one night that I had free, and I had to be around people. It was driving me crazy that I was not able to socialize. I went out to a bar by myself, and surrounded by people all night, and I'm at the bar on Facebook. I was on my phone trying to have a social interaction over the internet while I was surrounded by people that I had no idea how to talk to. And I realized that this is a huge problem for me. It was probably going to be a huge problem for other people, that having a conversation in person is not as easy as it sounds. It wasn't for me. And so we formed a corporation in 2019, and we got down to business. We started working on design, and then COVID happened. COVID is not a really good time to be working on an app that's designed to bring people together face to face. So we kind of went into a period of dormancy for a while, but during that time, we had a lot of time to do research. We had a lot of time to actually look at the problem from every angle, and I realized that we were designing an app about social anxiety, and social anxiety was a symptom, it wasn't the cause. The real thing that we needed to be looking at was not that I had social anxiety or I was shy at the bar, it's that I was lonely. And a lot of people are lonely. It affects about 22% of chronic loneliness affects about 22% of the population, could be as high as 33% depending on the study. And loneliness is not just being sad about being alone. It is a stress state. It is damaging to your body. It is as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It is characterized by high cortisol levels. For those of you who don't know what cortisol is, it's very similar to adrenaline, except it's more of a slow burn. But over time, it causes damage. Mentally, it is the leading cause of depression and the leading cause of anxiety, including social anxiety. Now, isn't that a cruel irony that the fact that you're lonely actually makes you shy? So there are several things that cause chronic loneliness, and a few of them are that more than half of the country now experiences social anxiety. That's especially bad in the younger crowds between 18 and 27. And we evolved in an area where constant contact was the main method of actually forming social bonds. In an urban environment, this doesn't happen. You may meet somebody and never see them again. So our solution addresses the symptoms of social anxiety, and it actually makes contact, or those fleeting contacts, more efficient and more meaningful, so that you're more likely to have a positive experience at the moment and a lasting experience where you may exchange contact information and meet again. The app is relatively simple. You create a profile. You go into a participating location. That is a huge keyword, participating location. That's relevant to our business model. And you are able to see other people who are checked into the app in that location. So you're able to use the selfie in their profile to identify them in the room, and you're able to see conversation topics that are relevant to them so that you can start a conversation with them without having to make small talk. So there are a lot of alternatives out there to socializing. We've been socializing as long as we've been human. So some of the two that we get mistaken for most often are social media. We are not a social media platform. We do not have the media portion of the social media platform. There is no user-generated content. We are not trying to keep people on the app scrolling through a news feed looking at ads. We're trying to get them to find a person to talk to, put the phone down, go talk. That is a little bit of a drawback because advertising is not a key revenue source for us. We're also not a dating app. Surgeon General Murthy identified that we have 3 levels of social needs. We have our romantic needs, we have our family and friends, and we have community. There's a lot of apps out there trying to get that romantic level fixed. Some of them work, some of them don't. There's a lot of sources out there where you can find community. That middle ground, friends and family, is lacking for most people. A lot of us are away from our family, and it's difficult to make friends because we don't see each other all the time. That's where we are. The reason why you will see some dating data in your profile with Maka Social is that first layer is often people's first priority. And until you can rule that out, it's difficult to move on to just have a conversation. So that information is not necessarily the goal. That information is there so we can move past it. Let's just get that out of the way and move past it to a conversation. Real world social networks are a competitor. They're kind of the phantom menace because we can't identify a specific competitor in this field. We have identified that there have been dozens of them that have popped up over the years. So this idea is not new. We can't patent it because the idea is not new. But few of them have survived because they generally try to create a user population first. It is nearly impossible to generate a user population big enough to guarantee that you're going to have 2 people in the same room at any given time. It takes millions. You can't do it. Other companies have tried, they weren't able to do it. We've got a different approach, I'll get to that. But every now and then another company pops up and tries. So to say that other companies are out there, probably. Are there any successful? No. Is there another startup that may try to do the same thing we're doing? Probably, especially if they see us doing it. There are some successful companies, well, one successful company, Meetup, that tries to bring people together in the same room based on a common theme or a common subject, a common interest. This is largely ineffective, even though they've been around for 20 years. They're not out of business. They're also not doing real well. They are the smallest of the social networks, even though they are the oldest, by a lot. And a lot of people have never heard of them. And the idea of bringing people together based on one interest is a little bit flawed to begin with because you end up talking about nothing but that one interest. We have a pretty good founding team. We have not had huge unicorn exits or anything, but I am a 4-time entrepreneur. My first 3 businesses were more lifestyle oriented. This is my first time trying to shoot for the moon. My CMO is similar. This is her 3rd business. And our CTO, not a whole lot of entrepreneurship experience, but he has been in IT for 20 years. And he's been doing every type of IT, from the help desk to programming to financial institution automation. We've also got some pretty good support. We were in Action Zone, we were in Bunker Labs, we just finished the 22 Alpha cohort. We graduated from the USF Student Innovation Incubator, and we are ongoing members of Embark Collective, which is a technology hub in Tampa. So fantastic mentorship support from Embark Collective. Our revenue model is 70% business to business SaaS, 30% B2C. That is generated primarily from participating locations. Our first market segment is actually private parties. And in that private party segment, our avatar is weddings, because wedding industry is huge. There are over 2.5 million weddings per year. It is the biggest party anybody is going to throw in their life, and they are throwing all kinds of money at it. So the idea there is that we can help their party guests to meet and mingle without stress. A lot of times you have family members who have never met before. That's the idea. The B2B angle is our first B2B segments are universities, military bases. We've made a little bit of traction and contacts in that, but we are really not expecting to launch that as a revenue source until the end of the year. And then of course, after we can successfully manage that, we want to bring it into the public in bars and other kind of social venues. And there are so many other market opportunities after that. but I want you to know that we are not saying that we can do anywhere, anytime. We are trying to focus on one segment at a time, but we know that once we get those segments, there are so many other opportunities out there, especially when we can go international. So our general marketing approach is that we go location first. We are not trying to generate a million person user base. We are trying to go one location at a time. The advantage of going one location at a time is we don't need 1 million people to guarantee you're going to have 5 people in the room at the same time. We need 5 people in the room. Just that room. We only need to look at one room and then the next room and then the next room. And that makes it a whole lot easier to get a concentration of users. It also makes us resistant in the future to competition, because if another company adopts the same model, we've got our population in this room and they've got their population in that room, and those populations don't have to cross. It's not like Facebook where you have one tipping point where everybody's on it and that's the end. So we are trying to raise $200,000. I had an advisor 2 days ago after we submitted this slide tell me that we really need to be raising $250,000. I hope that is not a deal breaker for you. And this is the allocation of funds. You can see that it is mostly going towards development costs and marketing costs. Even though you will see large chunks that are payroll, those are salespeople, marketing people, and developers. So it is still going towards R&D and sales. So our progress so far, we do not have paying customers. We are pre-revenue, sorry to disappoint. We're kind of disappointed by that too. But we have had some success. We have a working app. We have validated the user concept. We have thrown parties where people have used it, loved it. We've got some testimonials, and we even have some interest from the military. We had a very productive meeting with the Department of Behavioral Sciences on Fort Campbell, and they, with just a few tweaks and modifications, are really interested and had us submit a formal proposal that we will find out the results of by the end of the month. Even if they say no, I think that the tweaks they made are fantastic, and we can take that to any university or military base in the country and try to sell it there. So here's my point of contact for anybody who is interested, and that leaves some time for questions.
So Michael, you're addressing a pretty unique need, right? And it's almost like your consumers have to admit a deficit or a need to be social, right? They're shy. So how do you overcome that with your users? How do you get them on the app?
Generally in the B2B setting, military knows they have a problem. Universities know they have a problem. We have to sell it a little bit different B2C. We have to sell it more as your party guests are going to enjoy the party a whole lot more if they can mingle stress-free.
Thanks.
So we have actually split our brand because of that difference in the marketing approach. Our Maka Social brand is actually institutional focused, and our Make a Party brand is actually like more the party focused, and the content is different depending on the different audience, even though it's the exact same app.
So Michael, in your business model, how do you produce revenue? It's a subscription base. You're looking to add a subscription element to the app that it's a one-time fee, or does it monthly, or does you download the app and buy it? How does that work?
The first segment, which is the private party segment, is a $25, $45, and $65 tier, depending on whether it's a small party, large party, or like an all-weekend party. So that's primarily multimedia marketed, media sold. But down the road, we are looking at more of a B2B model, and that's where the bigger chunk of our revenue is going to be coming from, and that is subscription-based. For the military base or for the university, that's going to be anywhere from $800 a month up to $2,400 a month, depending on the size of the institution. For a bar, when we get 2 years down the road and reach that segment, we're looking at somewhere between $150 to $250 a month, depending on what the market will bear.
Do you have a medical partner? You have someone on your staff that's able to bridge that conversation over it's a tough, I think it's a tough sell for an inventor or developer to go into an installation and then appeal to leadership there that there's a mental, this is the fix to some of the mental issues that they're having on post without the credibility of a medical person.
Directly on the team, no, but we do have advisors in the psychology field.
Yeah.
And we have not experienced that problem. Like I said, we don't have a paying customer yet, but we're talking. Yeah. We're discussing this with those institutions. And like I said, in the military, you go to the mental health on a military base, and they're like, yeah, we got that problem. We've been thinking about doing something like this to solve it ourselves. That's the experience that we had on military bases. On college campuses, very similar. It's like they not only know, they're publishing that they have this problem.
Mike, when you look at your marketing piece, you talk about going to these institutions or these locations, and how do they market to their patrons or to the people there? Is it a package you give them, or how do they promote the app and say, hey, use this?
Now, bear in mind that this is our Tier 2 segment, so it's not as well developed as our Tier 1 segment, even though it's the most interesting. It's more interesting to me too. But we do have a rough plan. We are going to have boots on the ground events. We're going to have a table outside of the dining facility or outside of the student center for a couple of days where we can tell people the virtues of using the product. They also have access to email all of their students. We expect that 1% to 2% conversion rate just through that initial email. It doesn't cost either of us any money. Flyers and posters and whatnot in those kinds of environments. And then when it's working, it's going to take on a life of its own. Like people are going to say, hey, we tried this, why don't you use it? I know that's not the best plan, but it's a rough plan, and that's the best we can do when we're 8 to 9 months out. Once we actually have that first customer and we go in there and see what works, things are going to develop. We're going to adapt.
Have you thought of going to like apartment complexes where, you may have like a younger population and where they may be homebound to be able to interact with one another?
We've thought about it. It is a potential segment, but we can't be everywhere. We have to focus on something. So it's not a bad idea. It's actually a really good idea, but there's a lot of really good ideas. We've got to decide which good ideas we're going to do.
Mike, on your pricing, you use the term you're testing the market. Do you have some basis for the pricing that you're entering at? For our first segment, for the private parties, yes, we've done some surveying to see what kind of pricing people think is fair. That's going to be relatively a fast experiment once we actually get selling. For universities and military bases, our actual basis for that pricing is I started out really low, and then I had advisors telling me that I was charging way too little and we needed to go higher. But again, we're going to have to figure that out when we get there. Yeah, my thought for the university and military base was that the number you quoted was quite low.
Was quite low?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting that a lot. So that feedback is valuable. That's probably going to go higher.
Thank you.
But we know that even at that, we know that even on those numbers, we can still make really good revenue.
Michael, you stated you didn't have any paying customers. Do you have the app in the hands of any would-be customers right now?
We don't have customers yet. We are pre-revenue.
Okay. And
so we've done controlled experiments
Yeah.
where we've shown that it works, but we're still probably a month away from paying customers.
And how many controlled experiments would you say you had?
We've done a total of 8 controlled experiments.
Okay.
Our last one was the one that we actually had complete success, or we didn't have any bugs.
Gotcha.
So these have been beta testing experiments. These have not been market acceptance experiments. Give it up for Mark.